Welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. This is Dianne, your lactation consultant.
And I'm Abby, the Badass Breastfeeder. And today's episode is brought to you by Cake Maternity. Cake Maternity is back, and they Cake Maternity is a designer of a luxury maternity and nursing bras in a wide assortment of styles, sizes, and shapes to suit every body type. And today's episode is also brought to you by Fairhaven Health. Milky's Nipple Nurture Balm is your organic and lanolin-free answer to sore or cracked nipples. But we will hear more from those sponsors later. You can head to badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com and check out our sponsor page. If you ever need anything, see if you can give them any of your business because they make this podcast possible. And don't leave without checking our shop page. And scroll down and enter your email address, and we'll send episodes straight to your inbox every week. And we are holding our continued giveaway of people who are leaving reviews around. So if you're leaving reviews around anywhere, stars, reviews, anywhere you can, just send a screenshot to badassbreastfeedingpodcast@gmail.com, and you'll get a little goodie bag of stickers and thank you for nursing in public cards.
One of our very dedicated listeners sent me an email and she goes, I did a review a long time ago. So I went on Spotify and did some stars. It's like, perfect.
Yeah. If you can leave it multiple places, sure. Cool.
I know. Yeah.
It just helps get the podcast out there. It helps it get like ranked higher in searches on the different platforms. And so it helps. You're helping us.
Yeah, it really does.
And you probably heard, we noticed that you did download and listen to our last episode, which was all about introducing Patreon. And it is going over there. And you are invited to come and join our Patreon community. I was thinking about this, and I was telling my hairdresser that we joined Patreon, and she was like, "What's that?" And I was like, "Oh, wait, maybe I should explain that. You're probably not the only one who doesn't know." So Patreon is basically a crowdfunding or website or community or
yeah.
So we have started our community there, and there are you can choose between different tiers of benefits, which are, priced very, differently based on what you get. And so we have extra ad-free episodes. We have mini podcasts, tutorials, video tutorials. We have live streaming Q&As. We have Dianne and I have been posting, some kind of behind the scenes, personal stuff too, and having people are sharing, their personal stories. It's just a nice little community where, it's not public.
It's safe. It's a safe space.
Yeah, it's safe. It's just us. And it's really cool. And people are joining. And part of the joining is a shout out on the podcast. So I'm going to shout out to the people who have joined. And that is Elizabeth P. I'm not saying last names. I don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
I just say the last. I don't know. I feel like maybe some people are okay with it, but maybe some people aren't.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it either.
All right. We've got Elizabeth P., Kristen W., Mackenzie C., Hannah, Sarah U., Sarah with no H and no last initial, Jessica M., Ellen A., Michelle, Kayla, Elia J.S., and Kimberly D. So these are the people that we have been hanging out with over there. And if you want to come join us, that would be awesome. We're really hoping that, we can create like a little community of podcast listeners that we can interact with more directly. And you're going to need the direct link to our Badass Breastfeeding Podcast Patreon page, which you will just whatever you're holding right now or listening to, you just scroll down into the notes underneath that, and it'll be the very top link there, and you can just check it out. And we really hope we see you over there.
Yeah, it's our own little secret club.
It is, yeah.
I like it. It makes me feel very important. I'm very excited about it.
Yeah.
Should I do our review?
Please do.
Because our review kind of cracks me up. So the review itself is lovely. But the name on the review, you know how they put a little name or whatever, is Jerk Face. I thought that was hilarious. So that
awesome.
might be why I picked it. Might or might not be why I picked this review today, because it was the name is Jerk Face on it. So I found this podcast when we were going through bottle refusal for our baby. We had seen 2 IBCLCs that gave advice that didn't work out for us. We listened to this podcast and then went to another IBCLC that shared similar advice. It was life-changing for us. It took a month of patience and persistence, but she took a bottle right before I was going back to work. Oh my God, so stressful.
Oh, phew.
These ladies know their stuff, and now I found support in each podcast episode. It's a weekly favorite of mine and has supported me in my journey of exclusively breastfeeding to 9 months and counting. So congratulations to you, because that bottle refusal stuff is stressful.
Totally. That's amazing.
Yeah, I'm so glad you guys got it figured out. And I'm so glad we were able to help. I don't even remember what we said in that bottle refusal episode, but I'm glad it helped you. And I'm glad you found somebody that was like-minded, like my crazy mind. I don't even know how my mind works half the time, but good to know there's someone else out there like me. So
yeah, that is good to know.
My goodness. So today I was telling Abby, I'm a little nervous about this episode because there's so much info. There's so much stuff. I don't even know what to do. Good thing we have somebody that wrote in about it. Yeah, let's just panic about it, because that's what I like to do, is really panic about my shit.
And I got this message, and that's kind of how that's how many episodes are born, or through messages. But this person, Brittany, messaged me, and she said, hi, I just want to ask if you guys have talked about or have an episode about change in milk supply or letdown. It's so odd, but sometimes I can collect a ton of milk in my Ladybug Haka, not the suction one. And sometimes I have none collected all day. I'm very consistent with proper fueling and hydration every day. And I'm just so curious as to why what I collect tends to change from day to day. Thanks for all you do. I continue to tell everyone about your podcast. Gianna and I are 7 months and going strong with our breastfeeding journey. So, I mean, you maybe have noticed this with yourself, that you just have different amounts of milk throughout the day, maybe from day to day, maybe from week to week.
Yeah, it changes all the time. So a lot of times what I say to people is when they're using a milk collector, and she's using that Ladybug one, which is similar to the ones that Fairhaven Health makes. I'm blanking on the name of them. Milk Savers.
Milk Savers, yeah.
Yeah, the mini Milk Saver, which they're wonderful. Well, they have the big one and they have the mini, and they're awesome. And they're much better than the suction ones for you, anyway, for your body. But I usually tell people that are using those, you're going to get more from them in the morning than you will throughout the day. Yeah. And it's kind of the same with pumping. You get more in the morning than you do throughout the day. And some people find that when they try to pump late in the day or in the evening, it's just not working for them. They're not really getting that much. So a lot of it is hormones, overnight, your prolactin levels, and prolactin is one of the hormones that really keeps your milk supply going. So prolactin is highest overnight. And that's why in the morning you're more full, you're maybe leaking during the night. So I always tell people, feed the baby in the morning, 6, 7 a.m., whatever time it is that your baby tends to rise in the morning. Feed your baby, and then pump if you're trying to collect milk for a stash, or that's a good time to Haka those first couple feeds of the morning, because you're going to have a little bit more excess. Throughout the day, you just don't have as much excess. And a lot of it depends on how often your baby's feeding, hormone shifts, just all of that, what's going on in your life, all of that stuff. It really does depend on what kind of is going on throughout the day. But that is pretty much why it's a lot of those hormonal shifts. That is one of the reasons why you're not collecting as much as you go on through the day. We also kind of thought we would take this episode and talk about milk composition and how your milk physically changes throughout the day. What's in it.
Yeah.
And one of the things I wanted to talk about, I don't know, this is kind of a me thing, but a couple of weeks ago, I can't remember what the episode was. We talked about milk supply. We talked about milk supply with something. And Abby put it out for the internets, and some of the internets freaked out because it was something about milk coming in, I think. And people were like, you shouldn't use that
transition.
term.
Like, when did your milk come in? And then people were like, your milk doesn't come in.
Yeah.
And people were like, your milk doesn't come in because colostrum is breast milk. And so there's not really, it changes, but it doesn't come in, because coming in, with your milk coming in, perpetuates the idea that like you don't have milk at the start or something like that.
Yeah. People freaked out about that. So I wanted to clear that up. And I'm sure those people aren't listening, because I don't know if they're listeners. But that was, now that we're talking about it, that was the episode that was for like low onset, low milk supply kind of thing. So the truth behind it, I had the benefit of being able to watch a really cool presentation or webinar, whatever you want to call it, by somebody who is an expert in milk composition. He's like a brainiac. And really an expert in milk composition. And he said that colostrum is not milk. It's absolutely not milk. What colostrum is, it's actually very, very fascinating. Colostrum is protein. That's what colostrum is. Colostrum is pure protein cells that are transferring immunity. That's what it's an immune transfer from the parent to the baby. It is not for nutrition purposes. It is strictly for immune transfer. There are 100 trillion cells in every milliliter of colostrum.
Wow.
That's crazy.
That is crazy.
100 trillion cells. They're active cells. They're mobile, they're functional, and it is not milk. It's pure protein. So like the milk coming in, that is really like your body is starting that process of making its transitional milk. But like I said, we kind of talked about that to death, but I wanted to make sure in that one other episode, but I wanted to make sure that everybody knew, like, that's what we were talking about. And I knew it then. And I think I might've even kind of hinted to that on that podcast, that I was like, it's not milk, it's colostrum. It's a totally different thing. But in this presentation, they were very sure to say, like, this is not for nutrition. This is not a nutritious thing. This is for an immune transfer to the baby.
Which is why you don't have milk yet. Your baby doesn't come out hungry. Your baby's not born like, I could really use like a steak dinner after that whole process. Like, they have sucked you dry for 9 months for, a reason, for them to come out, not be starving, and be able to get that immune transfer upon being in a whole new environment.
Right. It's really very fascinating. It's very, very fascinating. This guy actually gets really excited about it when he talks about it, which I think is fun.
That's cool.
Yeah. So, milk, like we always say, like, oh, milk changes, from day to day, from feeding to feeding. And that is very, very true. And a couple of the things that I thought were really interesting that I wanted to make sure we talked about was the fat content. And I was telling Abby, I was like kind of nervous about doing this episode because there's so much info, and I just like was making notes all over the place. So there's like really, which is kind of how my brain works. It's just kind of like how all over the place, but we're going to talk a little bit about the fat content. So the milk composition, it's like carbohydrates, protein, fats, right? And there's like carbohydrates, there's 4 calories per gram. Protein is 4 calories per gram, and fats are 9 calories per gram. So the fat in your milk makes up to 50% of the baby's daily caloric intake, but it's variable. Fat is the one thing that really changes quite a bit in the milk, depending on what's going on, which I think is very, very interesting. So the thing with the fat, and people are always like, why does it look like there's no fat in my milk when I pumped it? Do I only make skim milk? What's the deal with the fat in my milk? People really get obsessed with the fat in their milk. The fat in your milk is highest like earlier in the day because that's when the baby is more active. And it's lower at night because the baby sleeps or the baby's supposed to be sleeping. Some people might be like, my baby doesn't sleep.
Like, what are you talking about?
I know. But that is why your milk is kind of like that. Just like how it's higher in melatonin at nighttime because it helps your baby to get more sleep or to help your baby set their sleep cycles than it is during the daytime. So the fat content in your milk. So people that say that might be, maybe they're pumping later in the day and they're not seeing as much fat. It doesn't mean that the fat is not in your milk. It means fat is variable throughout the day and changes. And depending on what your baby is doing, that's when you're going to get that fat in your milk.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's pretty, I don't know. I think it's pretty fascinating myself. Mm-hmm. One of the other things, and this came up a lot. So this has come up a lot. So I wanted to make sure I talked about this because it's come up recently. Iron. People ask all the time, should my baby be having iron? You know, my baby isn't eating a lot of foods. Should I be giving an iron supplement? This just recently came up with somebody else. And I've had a couple people ask about this actually recently. And there is a component to your milk called lactoferrin, which promotes, it's a whey protein, right? It's in your milk. It's a whey protein. And this enhances iron transport. And it also is an iron binding protein. So this is why we say that the iron in your milk is actually better than if you're going to give your baby iron from an outside source. Because a lot of times you'll hear people, start giving your baby iron at 6 months because the breast milk doesn't have as much iron in it after 6 months. And I think that is true, that the iron in your breast milk does decrease because you're starting to give solid foods at that point. However, the iron that is in your milk is going to be better absorbed by your baby than iron that is from some outside source.
Right.
So your baby is still able to get iron. Your baby still is getting iron from your milk.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, I don't know why everybody thinks it just goes away, but it doesn't. And it's actually a better source of iron.
Because we can't sell iron supplements because then, if people think that.
I know, right? All right. So maybe we'll take a break and hear from our new sponsors.
God, what?
Hey,
oh my God.
I know, right? But then we're going to talk about mature milk and what happens in mature milk. And we're going to talk about calories because I have the breakdown of what the calories are.
Oh, wow.
Milk.
Cool.
I know. Everybody wants to know that, right?
Yes.
Freak everybody out. My milk doesn't have enough calories. The doctor said so.
Now you have to drink cow's milk that has more calories.
Oh, and I can also talk about something that a cow doesn't have, because he even said, this is not found in cows with one thing. It came up.
All right, simmer down, Diane. It's time for an ad break.
I know. Okay.
We'll be right back. Today's episode is brought to you by Fairhaven Health. If you're struggling with sore nipples, you need pain relief fast. And when sore nipples turn to cracked nipples, forget about it. It's enough to want to call it quits. Damaged nipples can cause real problems with successfully breastfeeding your baby. Check with a lactation consultant that your baby is getting a good latch and get some Milky's Nipple Nurture Balm. Nipple Nurture Balm is formulated to soothe, protect, and heal sore or cracked nipples. This nipple balm is made with organic herbal ingredients and combined with natural moisturizers to help provide relief and to heal affected areas and even prevent cracks from reappearing. Nurture Nipple Balm alleviates the discomfort so the joy can be restored to your special bonding time. It's safe for both parent and baby, and there's no need to wipe it off before nursing. Head to fairhavenhealth.com, that's FAIRHAVEN health.com, and use promo code BADASS for 15% off of your purchase. And today's episode is also brought to you by Cake Maternity. Cake Maternity is a designer of luxury maternity and nursing bras in a wide assortment of styles, sizes, and shapes to suit every body type. With over 18 years experience, Cake Maternity sets the standard in embracing and showing the realities of motherhood. With no photoshopping policy, Cake Maternity are taking it a step further by committing to show and share real stories and imagery of moms in their most raw and vulnerable moments, to help remove any stigma and encourage open sharing of the realities of motherhood. The campaign, aptly titled We See You Warrior, embraces and acknowledges all moms without judgment and encourages women to share an unfiltered moment as a mom on Instagram to build a community of supportive women. Check out the campaign on Instagram at Cake Maternity and check out their bras at cakematernity.com. And you can use code BADASS15 for 15% off, which is valid for a year. And all of our sponsors and the promo codes can be found in the show notes under this episode, wherever you're listening from, and also at badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com. At badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com, you'll also find all of our other episodes and information about scheduling your very own one-on-one online lactation consultation with Dianne.
Yes. All right. So mature milk. So there are 400 different proteins in your milk, which I know, right? It's crazy. So 400 different kinds of proteins that we know of in your milk. And protein is actually lower. And so the protein, it goes like this. Your breast milk is, the nutrient breakdown of your breast milk is 87% water, 7% lactose, 4% fat, and 1% protein. And we are lower in protein because human mammals grow slower, right? Like other mammals gain 100 pounds in what, a month or two or something like that?
Yeah.
Like, look at freaking hippos. Like, how are they? Come on. Like, they have those animals, wild animals, have high protein milk because those are very big babies and they grow very, very, very quickly. We don't grow like that. It takes us like 25 years or something, I think they said, for us to like reach where we're supposed to be. So we have a lower protein milk, which is normal. However, preterm milk, if you have a preemie, preterm milk is higher in protein than full-term milk because those preemies need more milk or need more milk. Those preemies need more protein because they're smaller. So your body knows how to do that. So mature milk is high in carbohydrates, but low in protein. And your breast milk, there is a range of calories to breast milk, which is 19 to 21 calories per ounce. But the full range is 13.2 to 25.8 calories per ounce. And the average is about 20 calories. So when somebody says to you, there's not enough calories in your breast milk, we don't think there's enough calories in your breast milk, they don't know. Or let's add some formula to put, to add more calories to your breast milk. They don't know how many calories are in your breast milk. That person that's talking to you doesn't know that because it doesn't stay stagnant. It's not like this is how many calories are in your breast milk every single day of every hour of the day.
That is just sums up anytime somebody tells you about your breast milk. Everybody's body makes their breast milk for their baby, right? For their individual baby. They have no idea unless they have sent your breast milk to a lab at multiple times a day, every day.
Right.
What's in there? They don't know.
That is why, remember when we did that episode on those things that are supposed to like tell you what the nutrient content is in your milk?
Oh yeah.
Like you send them, those kits. You send them like a milk sample and they tell you what's in it. Yeah. That hour that you pumped it.
Right. Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah.
It is.
It's not totally a bottle crazy. Of formula where you can just say what's in there because you put it in there.
Right.
And then it's not going to change.
It's unbelievable.
Your body's constantly changing.
Go ahead. Minute to minute. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Minute to minute. It changes all the time depending on what your baby is doing. Literally. They're active during the day, so they're getting more fat in their milk. Like literally changes depending on what your baby is doing. So parents of males, their milk is 25% increased energy content, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
And one of the things I think is really interesting about that is because I had boy-girl twins who breastfed. So my body knew that when Brandon was nursing, that milk had to be higher energy content. And that your body knows that because of the saliva that the baby is passing when they get on the breast, which there's a name for that. I'll get to that. Weaning milk. So this is really interesting too. When you get to the point where your baby is kind of weaning or like not weaned, but or not even like, okay, I'm going to wean my baby. But when your baby does that natural process of they're just nursing a little bit less, the milk is higher in lactoferrin. And remember what I told you about lactoferrin, that's what keeps your iron.
Oh, yeah.
So as your baby is getting more towards weaning, your body is making sure that their iron is where it needs to be. So fats, like we were saying, fats are the most variable and they're half of the daily calories and they're 9 calories per gram, average of 26 grams per day. But it's extremely variable. And like I said, higher fat content during the daytime. So the thing that they're saying was not found in cows is the like DHA and ARA. And they have very long names. They're,
That's why they have acronyms.
Yeah, that's why they have acronyms. But they are something that is being added to formula. So if you look at formula, it'll say like, with DHA and ARA for brain development or whatever. And there's like, we do this, we put it in there. They make it because it's not found in cows. So they have to like create this DHA and ARA in a petri dish or however they create shit. I have no idea. I'm just guessing. And then they give it to your baby. But your baby doesn't absorb it as well because it's not natural. So your baby is not absorbing it well. But that is not for calories. The DHA and ARA in your milk is strictly for brain growth. So, and that is something that is very exclusive. One of the things that is very exclusive to breast milk. So they can create it, so to speak, and put it in formula, but it really doesn't do what it's supposed to do because your baby doesn't absorb it well. Protein in the milk stays steady. That is one thing that doesn't really change all that much. Like fats are variable. Your protein is your protein, pretty much. And then we kind of talked about colostrum. Colostrum is 18.7 calories per ounce, which, it's all, like I said, it's very high in protein and sodium, low in fat and lactose, and is not a food. It starts at about 20 weeks gestation. And it's also high in fat-soluble vitamins. And your milk is too. And the fat-soluble vitamins being A, D, E, and K. And he was talking, I don't want anybody to take this if you're pregnant right now. Don't go running into labor and say, the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast said my baby doesn't need vitamin K, because that's absolutely not what I'm saying. But it was kind of interesting that he was saying that like there is vitamin K. It's a fat soluble vitamin. It's something that they give to your baby at birth, and people have a lot of controversy around it. Here where I live, it's one of the things that's mandated, and they do it because vitamin K helps with blood clotting. So if there was like, some reason that we needed blood clotting, as babies are super young, like newborns, like circumcision comes to mind, of course, but there's also like if your, brain bleeds and things like that, if there was a problem or situation or, high risk babies. But colostrum is high in those fat soluble vitamins, and your milk also has them too. So he was saying that vitamin K, the whole reason they do vitamin K like that is based on research that was done a long time ago when babies were primarily formula fed. He said if they did that research now with babies that are breastfed, they might determine that that's something that is not needed at birth. But of course, none of that research is actually being done. So
no,
who
and
knows?
even I feel like even when research is done, it doesn't change hospital protocol.
It necessarily doesn't. Yeah,
it doesn't, because they don't have time to like redo everything.
No, they really don't.
You go in there, man. You go into like a labor and delivery part of the hospital. People are freaking out. I mean, they're just like running around, going from place to place. I remember that labor. People like that. People actually get jobs in there because they like the
they
adrenaline
thrive on
rush.
the chaos. Yeah.
Yes. And I remember my nurse, she was super nice, but she was like, I mean, she looked like she was hopped up on speed. I mean, maybe she was. I don't, but like, they're not, can you imagine? Like, okay, now we're just doing all this stuff differently now.
Yeah.
It's not that easy. Anyway,
it's crazy.
That's my rant.
So I found this really great article. I'm going to put it in the show notes. I definitely suggest everybody check it out because it is really interesting. And it basically, I was telling Abby, I'm always kind of cautious on stuff I read when I pick up these blogs and stuff like that. But this one was really like on par with the stuff that he was saying in that webinar. So I felt really confident that this was a good source. So I am going to put this in the show notes because it was really good. But let's talk about the carbohydrates. We talked a lot about the fats. 200 different types fatty acids that are in the breast milk. It's variable. It changes quite a bit throughout the day. Carbohydrates, the carb or the sugar profile of breast milk is also very diverse. And the predominant carb in breast milk is lactose. The concentration remains pretty stable around 3 weeks postpartum and onward. And it provides energy for the developing brain. So they need this, obviously, the high lactose content. Our brains are only like 25% developed when we're born because we can't pass these kids if our brains were fully developed and their heads were normal size. Like, could you imagine trying to have a baby that had a huge ass head full of brains? It's just not going to work.
Right.
So lactose also helps maintain milk consistency and absorption of minerals like calcium. So human milk oligosaccharides, we call them HMOs. Breast milk contains a category of carbs called human milk oligosaccharides. And this is more of a recent discovery. And they have found over 200 different kinds of HMOs in milk. And it helps to kind of like, they're thinking that the HMOs shed light on the immune benefits in breast milk. And for example, in comparison to mature breast milk, HMO content is almost twice as high in colostrum. Babies don't digest it. There's a lot of things in human milk, because they were really talking about a lot of different things in human milk that are not there for calories and are not there for nutrition. They have a completely different function, which is, I think is just, really interesting. So HMOs, babies don't digest them. They function as a prebiotic. So babies do, I knew that there was prebiotic in human milk, but I really didn't know like the breakdown of like what was going on with them. Mm-hmm. They promote the growth of beneficial gut bacteria, which helps the baby from harmful bacteria. So it prevents like neonatal diarrhea, respiratory infections, and support healthy gut microbiota. So this is something that like really helps to promote good health and immune system support for your baby. And there's over 200 of them that are found in your milk. Carbs provide more than energy. They also help to establish the gut microbiome too. So carbs are super important and they're important for everybody. I know everybody's like, don't ever eat a carb again because it's bad for you. But that's
because
really,
Atkins did that.
Yeah. So this is, that really does support a lot of stuff. So protein, we talked about that a lot. Let me see. Let me go to where. So breast milk composition changes during each nursing session. Foremilk is the first milk that's expressed. It is thinner consistency and higher lactose content to quench the baby's thirst. And we do talk about like, people talk about like foremilk and hind milk, but it really is like that first initial letdown your baby is getting when they first get on the breast. And imagine they haven't eaten in a couple hours, right? And you feel that fullness. You're like, okay, now it's time for the baby to eat. You kind of can feel that fullness of the breast. And you go to feed the baby and that milk is a little bit thinner. This is followed by the fattier hind milk, which really what happens, it's not really, we shouldn't even call it foremilk and hind milk. No. What really happens is as the baby is nursing and drinking that milk, like the milk is getting fattier as it goes, right? So once the baby drinks that thinner milk, then it's like getting into like fattier milk. So it's really just the process. People are like, how long should I leave the baby on until they get the fatty milk? If they're an efficient feeder, they're getting everything that they need. Like we don't need to time them and, all of that stuff. But this is where we run into problems where people say only do 10 minutes at a time, only do 10 minutes on one breast and switch and do 10 minutes on the other breast. We're not giving your baby enough time to nurse on one breast for them to like feed efficiently and take the milk out of that breast like they need to. So the mechanical action of sucking at the breast triggers change in composition. And the amount of fat in your milk depends on how full or drained your breast is. So if your baby is feeding every like pretty frequently, they're getting more fat because they're feeding more frequently. If you've got like these super full breasts, you're getting more like a more watery milk from the start. So fat content in a fuller breast is diluted due to milk volume, just what I was just saying. This means the milk has a lower fat percentage. So that earlier foremilk, thinner milk has a lower fat percentage. In the drained breast, the same fat content becomes concentrated. This makes for a higher fat milk. But it really, like studies that they've done show that babies, by the end of the day, consume a similar amount of fat. It doesn't really matter if it was like, you know, did they feed on the breast that was emptied more or whatever? Like they really, it all evens out in the end is really what it comes down to.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's another big message. They don't know, and it all evens out in the end.
Yeah, exactly.
That's, you know.
Yeah. I was trying to find like what doesn't affect breast milk composition. This was interesting. Ethnicity, gestational weight gain. Based on current data, weight gain during pregnancy doesn't seem to affect the fat content of your milk. They looked at analysis of women from 7 different countries. Doesn't significantly influence breast milk composition. And breast size has nothing to do with the production of your breast milk. So, all right, we're going to talk about the baby spit backwash. Oh, do you want to say something about that?
No, I was going to say like probably like what you eat and what you drink. I would imagine that doesn't affect it either.
There's like fats. You can impact like the type of fat, I think, in the milk. Like if you ate like a high, saturated fat content diet, I think that would change some of the fats in the milk. But a lot of the composition isn't necessarily changed by diet from what I understand, which is why we always tell people like, diet
you don't need to have a specific diet or a specific thing in order to have the appropriate milk.
Exactly. So there is this, they call it a phenomenon. I don't know if that's what I would call it, but it's called baby spit backwash, which I think is kind of funny. The breast milk composition is tailored immunity through baby spit backwash. So researchers hypothesize that the baby is able to signal his or her specific immune needs to the mother through their saliva. So during breastfeeding, the suckling creates a vacuum and forces a mixture of breast milk and baby saliva to go back upstream into the mother's nipple. And this retrograde milk flow from the baby's mouth to the mother's nipple produces on-demand immune cells for the baby. And then that's created and then passed back to the baby again. So it's really fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why we say, like, if your baby's sick, just keep feeding him because your body's going to know what to do.
Right. Right. I mean, it's like when they're inside you, you're sharing your sharing your bloodstream and you're sharing all of that stuff. And when you come out, it's not like that doesn't all completely stop because your body is continuing to communicate with your baby through the breast milk.
Mm-hmm.
Back and forth.
Yep. Absolutely. Baby spit backwash goes into the mother's nipple, signaling the exact type of antibodies needed to fight infection. So I think that's really interesting. So that is kind of basically some of breast milk composition is really, there's a lot to it. And as you can see, they're finding out new stuff all the time that is in the milk. I don't even know how they possibly know, like, oh, there's 400 different proteins. What the hell does that even look like?
I mean,
does one have 3 hairs on it and the other one has 2? Like, what does it look like? How do they know?
You can see protein in a microscope, right? I mean, someone can.
Yeah. How can you tell they're all different? Like, it's just fast. It's so cool. Like, I don't know.
That's why they go to school, to get smart like that.
Yeah. They're really smart.
But
and then I can just
don't
read
let
it.
anyone ever tell you again that you aren't doing much by breastfeeding your baby that, like, take it or leave it, no big deal.
Right.
Clearly it's a big deal.
It's
You're
amazing.
kind of a big deal.
Yeah. And some people say, oh, it's superhero to, like, you see those memes all the time. Like,
Yeah.
Come on. This is like legit fascinating, amazing stuff that your body does.
Yep.
It's really just unbelievable. And there's more and more stuff that we only touched the surface of it, just to kind of like, oh, let's talk a little bit about it. Like, there's stuff that is coming out all the time. So yeah. So that's your 101 on breast milk composition. And like I said, I'm going to link this. I encourage everybody to like read through it because I just kind of skimmed some of it. And that's it.
Thanks
Enjoy
for
reading
listening.
it. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.